Insider, Sean and Tristan DeCross.
All right, so we were scheduled to come back at 1 today. We didn't exactly get that working out. We had to work out some kinks because it's been a while since we actually did a live show. So before we get into the actual show, as you can see, we are wearing a couple shirts here. Legacy, parental, survival wear. Just want to give a shout out to our boy, Stefan Gross. I know it's been a while since you sent us the gear, so thank you. We haven't had a chance to take photos or anything like that for you. So today we're coming back live. I figured what better way to do it than to say, hey, you know what? We'll rock the shirts today on the show. So Steph Gross, if you're watching, here it is for you, buddy. So now, without any further ado, without any further delay, here we go.
Let's get it on. Sprawl and brawl, ground and pound. Get ready for an MMA showdown. Now the ultimate Octagon Insider, Sean and Tristan DeCross.
All right, everybody, we are back. A little bit of an issue with Facebook Live, so we've gone back to youtube.tv. We are your boys, the Sports Warriors. I'm Tristan Ducross. Along my side, as always, is my brother, the one and only Sean Ducross. Sean, we have to do it, right? We, the people. Without any further ado, the man known as Jack Hager signed on the dotted line and joined Bellator MMA. You know, we were talking about this before we came on the air, was when Jack Swagger, a.k.a. Jack Yeager, was on WWE and created this persona of we, the people, and that was his gimmick, it was one of those things that was like, you know, is this really going to take off? To me, it never really took off. To you, it took off at some point. Proves how much wrestling I really started tuning into. But you look at the transition of this and you're like, we, the people, is probably going to take off in MMA, and it's going to be scratching your head going, wait a second. How does that make any sense? How is that even going to finally get a reputation in MMA? And it's like, well, because of the fact that when you look at it, it's interesting. It's one of those things that Bellator does so well is at their temple events, making these big extravaganzas for their Titantrons. What better way to do than him out to we the people? It's going to be interesting and it's going to catch on. And I know that people are dogging Jack Yeager right now for coming in and saying, oh yeah, you know what? I signed with Bellator. That's all gravy. That's all good. But at the end of the day, all he is doing what he went ahead and did anyways. And that is, hey, I'm going to go ahead and become a MMA fighter because I was a collegiate wrestler. A very well-rounded collegiate wrestler. Set records at University of Oklahoma. So you see everything that's going on with him. It's like, it makes sense for him to do it. Why wouldn't he do it? Because he's got the pedigree to do it. Like you said earlier. Well, Brock Lesnar was a collegiate wrestler. Why didn't he do it? Why didn't anybody bag on him for doing it? Then it's like, well, let's transition. Bobby Lashley, collegiate wrestler. Look how much success he's had. Why is this going to be any different? Why? Because he's never physically competed at the level? Okay. At the end of the day, he's a collegiate wrestler. You can teach striking. You can't teach quality wrestling. You can teach wrestling to get you by, but that's to the extent of it. So if you want to teach wrestling, by all means, go for it. But it's not going to transition to the next level. You got to be bred in that mentality of, oh, I'm going to take this guy down. I'm going to do this. And not be afraid to get hit to come in. So Jack Yeager has everything going for him. Not a lot going against him. When he set the most record for the most pins in college, what better way to do it than what we saw in wrestling? You know, he went to wrestling and away from his wrestling background of Oklahoma because of the fact that he was behind Tommy Harris at Oklahoma. He was behind Dvorak at Oklahoma. So he was a third string guy. He wanted something else. So he went to wrestling. If he wasn't behind those two guys and this opportunity wasn't presented to him by Jim Ross, he may have transitioned right into MMA because that's where the avenues were coming from in his time frame. Just wrestling came knocking first.
And I also find it very funny that people are quick to point the finger because you come across from the WWE to a real what they classify as a real sport instead of it being choreographed. Now, my issue with that is that a lot of these wrestlers have come from wrestling backgrounds, like you were saying, and it's almost laughable when you start talking about these guys that go to choreographed wrestling. But you have to understand that back in the day when people were in college and they were wrestling, there was none of this UFC, MMA, mixed martial arts. It never was taking off. There was no pay. There was nothing to it. So how do these wrestlers get paid when that's all you know how to do is wrestle? You know, so when the WWE came knocking on your door, or WCW came knocking on your door back in the day, that's where you sign. Why? Because that's where the money was. Now it's like I've heard plenty enough wrestlers from the WWE to TNA to Impact, whatever you want to call it, from the WCW days. They have all said that if mixed martial arts was big back then like it is now, they would have never stepped foot in squared circle.
Yeah, they would have all transitioned to mixed martial arts. You've heard The Rock say it countless of times. There was even talks of Ryback signing with Bellator to compete in the heavyweight division. We haven't even seen him transition yet. Bellator, see, and this goes back to what you and I have talked about, is how low the heavyweight division is in combat sports. If the heavyweight divisions were actually relatively good and where they had elite fighters at that level, we may not be even having this conversation of Jack Yeager coming in, Ryback coming in. We wouldn't be talking about WWE guys going to Bellator or going to MMA for that matter. But we're having this discussion, we're having this conversation because of the fact that the heavyweight division in all combat sports, because I know people are going to go, oh my God, that's not true. It's true. It is very true that there is a limited amount of heavyweights that truly want to fight and compete at an elite level. A lot of heavyweights love to fight underneath their own boundaries. Not underneath when, oh, hey, guess what? I need you to sign on this fight dotted line because, you know, I don't want to fight. Bobby Lashley's that first person that comes to mind. Is that, you know what? I saw a couple of posts on our Facebook once Jack Yeager signed with Bellator. And then they announced the heavyweight tournament that we'll get to a little bit later. Was that at this point in time, oh, I want to see Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley would be great in this tournament. Bobby Lashley is the prototypical problem we have with heavyweights or combative fighters, period. That is that they fight when they want to fight. They show up when they want to show up. They take the easy fights. They don't take necessarily the toughest fights. Is that hard criticism? Sure it is. But is it realism? Yes, it is. And you know what? We were talking about Sean Loeffler, that if you checked out the impromptu interview we did, we talked to Sean Loeffler this past week at Cali Cage Wars and discussed the same topic. You get these fighters that say how much they want to fight, but when it comes showtime, they tuck their tail and they run the other way.
That's what the heavyweight fighters are. I'm sorry.
Even some of, let's be real though, even some of the fighters that aren't even heavyweights are exactly of those people. Like, you literally try to look down their spine to see if they have a yellow stripe down their back, because I don't care where you want to go, how bad you want to fight. At the end of the day, it's how much effort you put in. If you put as much time as you claim you do into MMA, into training every single day, put your best on the line. Put your put your money where your mouth is. It is that simple.
Do you want to be the
sugarcoat-
best? Do you want to be the best, or
Right.
do you want to be a guy that has a record that's falsified?
Right. And instead, you're quick to point fingers at, like, Jack Hager. Why? Because he's stepping into your lion's den? Like, come on.
Then beat him. If he's
Right.
not, if he's not
Call
going
him
to,
out.
if he's
Say,
not,
I want him.
if he's not going to be Bobby Lashley, and he's going to come into Bellator and legitimately put all of his chips into this basket, I give him props. I just hope he's not like a Bobby Lashley that can't split and figure out which avenue he wants to do. Because quite frankly, we've said it since day one. Bobby Lashley should be in MMA. Bobby Lashley should be in this Bellator heavyweight tournament. Because it's been long overdue. So, because it's been long overdue, it's time to make that jump. And you know what? Fightbook said it in the chat room. Is that if a fight comes your way, don't back out of it. Exactly. You're in the fight game for a reason. Jack Yeager never stepped foot into an MMA ring, octagon, cage, whatever you want to say. But at least he has the balls to do it. I've been openly adamant. I'll never do it. You've thought about doing it.
Yes, I have. If anybody wants to train me, I'm good with it.
But
Let's rock and roll.
But it takes another man to actually go, you know what? I've never done it, but I have the collegiate background. Let me go ahead and test my skill level. That's bravado. That is courage. That is what makes Jack Yeager the man of the people. Is because he's doing something that he's not afraid of doing when he's never had to do it, because he likes the opportunity and the challenge that is being presented to him.
But
whether he maintains that is a different question.
But what's also funny about Jack was the fact that he also made it perfectly clear that he was one of those people that has always thought about doing mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
But again, money talks, BS walks. WWE came knocking on his door, offered him a big contract. He said yes. You know, that's the only reason why it turned to the right, is because of that. And here we are today. And everybody wants to immediately point saying that, oh, he's going to be nothing more than a CM Punk. No, CM Punk, that boy has no background. None. Maybe a little bit of jiu-jitsu training, but outside of that, man, he ain't got nothing. So, at what point do you just finally say, dude, allow these guys to earn a paycheck, allow these guys to fight? It's not going to be fake. It's not going to be scripted. They won't allow it. So don't think that that Bellator is going to be scripted because they have all the scripted wrestlers. I haven't seen anything scripted from Bobby Lashley outside of Dan Lambert and ATT on Impact Wrestling with Stefan Bonner, King Mo, and Moose. That's about as scripted as we're going to get when they cross over to Impact Wrestling. They're not bringing wrestling over into MMA. They're just not. It'll never happen. It gets people talking. It gets people to get riled up. That's what they do. That's the only way you guys care about what's going on in the mixed martial arts sport. Not about how good or technically sound anybody is anymore. It's let's put some stupidity on the market here for a minute. And let's remember something that I told you, Sean, is that here we go. 10 things into what we classified as a side note would be. Oh, I lost my train of thought now.
Way to get sidetracked there, Tristan.
Right? Well, you were getting something, so.
But when you look at where you're going, I'm not even sure where you're going with that one either. But the end of this is that when you talk about scripted and non-scripted of wrestling first,
Clearly,
MMA,
we're not scripted.
No, no, and that's what makes us unique. We're not afraid to admit that. Well, you know what? We just lost the train of thought. We went kind of left. Now we're coming back. But that's what makes this unique, and we've already said that. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go to a break, and then we'll come right back.
Yep. And in the meantime, we are the Ducross Brothers. I'm Tristan Ducross. Along my side, as always, my partner in crime, the one and only Sean Ducross. Sean, UFC 120 Norfolk, saw a former champion just absolutely brutalized and broken. And when is it enough when somebody should step in and stop a career of a fighter? Hear our take on that when we come back. More with the Sports Warriors, the Ducross Brothers. Tristan Ducross, Sean Ducross. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We are the Ducross Brothers Sports Warriors. I'm Tristan Ducross. Along my side, as always, is my partner in crime, Sean. Crazy events over the week. We're going to talk about California Cage Wars here. Some crazy fights from top to bottom, from what I would classify as the prelims to the main card with the pro fights. Incredible card. We're going to touch on that later on this evening. But in the meantime, UFC Fight Night 120 took kind of a sad turn, if you will, when we're looking at the main event of the evening that saw Dustin Poirier versus Anthony Pettis. At one point, many people thought that Anthony Pettis was going to win.
But you know what? I don't even want to talk about that right now.
What do you want to talk about, Sean?
I don't want to talk about that right now. What I want to talk about is the guy from our hometown. I mean, from not our hometown, but from Fightbook MMA's hometown of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The guy I want to talk about is Diego Sanchez.
When is it enough?
Is enough.
Hey, Michael Z, the new setup.
When you look at it and you see that what Diego Sanchez is, and I say is that I'm trying to be as nice as I can.
Oh, no. Sean.
But
we
he
are the
looks
Sports
like
Warriors. Do not sugarcoat this.
He's getting to the point that he's almost punch drunk.
I was thinking that.
How many more beatdowns is he going to take? The fact that he is 4-7 since 2012, the fact that the guy's been beat up, knocked out, and the fact that he got hit so hard with that sized up elbow that it's time to just say, you know what? We're done. It's over. Kaput. Hang up your gloves, put them in the center of the octagon, call it a career.
A guy from Albuquerque, New Mexico in the chat room, Fightbook MMA, he says he even agrees Diego should hang up the gloves. You know, at what point do you start worrying about a fighter's health?
Yeah.
How many has this guy been into?
And
how many brutalities does he have to get into before it's like, dude, I get you love to fight. I get it. But do you really want to die in that octagon?
Because
that's where you're heading.
That's what's coming close. Is like, yes, you know, we've heard your stories of you battling bulimia, or the fact that you went down the dark side with drugs and alcohol. The fact that you partied like a rock star for all those years. when you look like and you act like what you do, there's at some point that the UFC needs to step in for Diego Sanchez and say, hey, hold up. We can't have you fight at this level anymore. Because I don't even know what brain cells are left. Because you're talking about CTE at this point with him. We've seen people go down the scary side of what's happened from concussions. How much damage is done in his head? You talk about that. You know what? Mark Hunt came out and said, hold up.
I slur my words. I can't. What I eat for breakfast.
If he's saying that, and the UFC quickly pulled him from UFC Australia,
how are we still letting Diego Sanchez sit inside the cage?
I'm confused. Makes no sense to me how you pull a guy for that.
For saying, I'm forgetting certain things. For saying that I'm not 100%. But man, you let Diego Sanchez go inside that cage, take that vicious elbow that dropped him like a sack of potatoes.
Like, dude, that was one of the worst drops I've ever seen. Is like Matt Brown sized him up like that,
right,
and just came right over the top,
cracked him. Dude, brother, Diego Sanchez violently KO'd like that.
See,
how do you, as a mom or dad or wife, allow this? Like, if I'm a friend of Diego Sanchez, or I'm a family member of Diego Sanchez, I want to pull him aside and say, dude, you left it all out on the cage. You did it all for the fans. You did everything that you're supposed to do. But you can't compete anymore. We have to look out for your health.
Right? You had the gumption to do that for Mark Hunt. But when you look at the UFC Fight Night 120 Norfolk, it was confusing because of the losses. Okay? Diego Sanchez left you raising questions about how he's still fighting.
John Dodson was on this card and he lost.
He lost to a former World Series of Fighting champion in Marlon Morales. And you look at that and it's like, at this point, is he the gatekeeper of the bantamweight division now? Because of the fact that he's 2-3 in the last 5 fights.
He's the prototypical guy.
He's lost both fights to Dimitri Johnson.
He's the fighter that needs to win now via knockout. Because any time that kid goes to the distance, 98% of the time, this guy's going to lose. And I don't know why the judges have it out for him, because I watched this fight and I thought it could have gone either way. Like, it could have literally gone Dotson's way and he could have gotten it. But, dude, this guy has like the string of bad luck. Because the minute it goes to the decision, I'm looking like, well, he lost. Doesn't matter. On my scorecard, I thought he won. On their scorecard, you're completely wrong.
And you know, Michael in the chat room said that he used to love Diego Sanchez, but his boys, Clay Guida, he won via KO. Yeah, he won via KO, but he's another interesting guy. Because you've seen wars between Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida.
Yes, you have.
You've seen wars that Clay Guida's been in. Where did it all kind of get blurred between the two? How is that Clay Guida still what resembles a normal fighter, and Diego Sanchez resembles a guy who's on his way out?
And
the only thing I can think of is that basically Diego Sanchez, at his age, has fought for already almost a decade. He's fought actually longer than Clay Guida has, taken more abuse than that, but their styles are so contrasting.
But what's interesting is between those two is that you look at Clay Guida and you're saying that he resembles a little bit of a man, what's left of a person. And then you look at Diego Sanchez, dude, he's not even there. Like, if you can look in a man's soul and look at eyes, that's no longer a person that you can honestly have an intelligent conversation with at this point.
And being
Clay, you could still kind of get a decent interview out of.
You know, maybe Fightbook can touch on this in the chat room or on our Facebook to Cross Brothers a little bit later. But my question to him, because he is in Albuquerque, he is near Jackson Wink MMA. I'm assuming he maybe has crossed
to Diego Sanchez.
Maybe he's crossed once or twice with Diego, or maybe Blake Stevenson from Loaded Joe's. I've seen him do interviews. I've seen him do an interview with Diego Sanchez. Maybe he knows what the aspect is of what he sees personally with where the mindset now is of Diego Sanchez.
But where would the mindset right now be for Anthony Showtime Pettis? Here's a guy that took on Dustin Poirier. And he had a triangle submission so ridiculously deep into Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier was able to get out of it and escape. And then all of a sudden it's like a switch went off in Anthony Pettis' head. And he no longer was the same fighter that started the fight. Like, Showtime was no longer that. He was a shell of himself. The minute Dustin Poirier got out of that triangle choke, Anthony Pettis was done. Like, he was mentally broken. And then he was brutally assaulted and just mangled to be on recognition by the end of that fight.
Like Pettis,
there was no more will left in Anthony Pettis.
And that was the theme of Norfolk. Where did a lot of these guys go wrong? What happened? Pettis isn't the same. Pettis seemingly does what he wants when he wants. Shows up when he wants. Disappears when he wants. Gets beat up. Puts on a fight of the night with Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier comes out and says, I want the winner of Alvarez versus Gaethje. Okay.
And we'll talk about the heavyweight tournament coming up soon.
If you're at Dustin Poirier, I was never a big fan of Dustin Poirier. The Diamond. I thought he was...
He had it. He had it all.
He was like your Diamond Dallas Page. The guy that had the it. The guy that you wanted to see transition to being a successful fighter. Does so. Dustin Poirier is channeling that type of mentality. He had the promise. He had what you look for in a fighter. Couldn't quite turn the page. Dropped back down to lightweight. And now he resembles a very qualified fighter who's running a streak right now of 6-1 since 2015. His only loss that maybe hurt him was the fact that he lost to Michael Johnson, who has lost his last two fights to Khabib and to Gaethje.
Gaethje versus Alvarez is coming up. That's where you start transitioning now to see if Dustin Poirier has still the last run in him.
And if he does, what better fight is like...
Then put him against Gaethje or Alvarez, the winner of that fight. You want to talk about an exciting fight? Here you go. This is what you need. But Pettis is at an all-time crossroads right now.
See, that's interesting. Sorry to cut you off, Tristan, but see, that's interesting. So Fightbook has told us the last time he saw Diego looked great. He looked focused. He didn't look like the way that we said he comes across. So if that's the case, then good for him. But then if that's the case, step in now before it gets worse.
Yep.
So thank you for that information, Fightbook, because I've always been a fan of Diego. I've always loved him since The Ultimate Fighter. Him and his crazy little stares and stuff, and his chants of yes. Those were great moments. And great moments is what Dustin Poirier is having right now.
Yes. And Pettis is not.
Nope. And you've got to think about putting Poirier versus the winner of Alvarez versus Gaethje.
And what do you do with Pettis, though? Because Pettis is crossroads. He has always said from the moment he stepped inside of a UFC cage, and if I'm wrong, cool, but I I swear, at some point in his career, I vastly remembered that he said that he got into fighting for one thing and one thing only, and that was to be a champion, not a contender. So since he will never be a top 5 contender in the UFC, does he move on? Does he stay put? Do we start questioning what is going on with Anthony Pettis? What direction does this man go? Because clearly, it's not a top 5 fight. It's not a title contender fight. Like, you want to create a guy, Joe Duffy, put him against Anthony Pettis. If Anthony Pettis loses, get out of Dodge, because
That would be an interesting fight.
he's done.
But what was it? But what's interesting is, how do you view UFC Fight Night 121, Verdum versus Tybura, the Australian fight in which we were just talking about?
The event that was supposed to be headlined by
Mark Hunt,
Hunt,
replaced
yep.
by Verdum. This been a who's of replacing.
Right, because you had Mark Hunt that was replaced by Verdum. You had
Tim Beans replaced Jesse Taylor.
who's been suspended for a year.
Yep. And then Jesse Rose Clark replaced Joanne Caldwell.
Yep.
Calderwood.
Shane Young is now in as well. So he's also a newcomer that's on it.
It's like, my goodness.
Alex Volnovsky, he's gone through 3 different opponents. One cited a back injury, one pulled out. Then he gets Shane Young. I mean,
This card
Okay.
is about as bad as Bellator 188.
oh, dude.
But one thing that stood out on this card, yeah, you know what? You get Verdum versus Tybura, and it's an interesting one because you got a former M1 champion who already beat up the number 5 ranked in Orlovsky. Now he's taking the number 2, so if he wins this one, he jumps right up to the top of the food chain. His last 2 fights, he's won via knockout. He has finished over half of his fights already. So this guy's a legitimate threat to Verdum. But the thing that boggles my mind is you got Brooks versus Lentz on the undercard.
I was going to say that.
Rebooked from UFC 216.
Sean, can they make it off the scales this time?
Brooks has lost his 2 consecutive losses to Alex Oliveira via KO in the 3rd round, Charlie Oliveira via rear naked choke in the 1st round.
Sean, can they get off the scales? Because this one, the last time they were scheduled, Nick Lentz versus Will Brooks at UFC 216, they got to the weigh-ins, and then Nick Lentz could not compete after the weigh-ins due to medical reasons. Do they get off the scales?
It'll be interesting to see if they actually make it into the octagon.
Yes, because
But-
Lentz has an issue with making weight.
But my question is that if Brooks loses again decisively, he is 1-2 in the UFC.
Yep.
Where does this guy go from here? If he
Because
can't compete with the UFC fighters in this division, how can he go back to Bellator? How can he go back there and compete again?
When he's the one that burned that bridge. He was the one that made it perfectly clear that he wanted better competition.
Better is
Again,
not always better.
Right. Sometimes you look at your skill set, you look at your matchups, and those will dictate whether you are a successful fighter or not. And Will Brooks, man, he just get ran right through the ringer. Like, this guy has
By Oliveira, who one of them's always 90% of the time seeming like he misses weight every fight.
right. Beck Rollins versus Jesse Rose Clark. You mentioned Rose Clark as being a replacement. Clark, 2 fights in Invicta, both lost. Beck Rollins is on a 2-fight losing streak. Both these girls, I'm looking at them, I'm going like,
They're both at a crossroads.
right.
Somebody needs to show up and fight.
If Beck Rollins loses, dude, she's going to get released because you're on a 3-fight losing streak. In your last 6, you've won 2. You've won 2 fights. So, again, Beck Rollins, potential to be there, but against Jesse Rose Clark, that's going to be a tough fight. We are the New Cross Brothers, the Sports Warriors. Bellator MMA does something that we've been hinting at for a while, And we get it. The heavyweight tournament, it's coming to Bellator MMA. Your boys, the Sports Warriors, real opinions backed with real facts with your boys, Sean and Tristan Ducross. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Sean and Tristan across the Sports Warriors. Check us out on Facebook Live and YouTube on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or you can visit our website at www.jewcrossbrothers.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. I'm Tristan Ducross. On my side, as always, is my brother, the one and only Sean Ducross. Sean, Bellator MMA. We never cease to be amazed with something that all of a sudden pops out. We get word that Bellator's coming back to Temecula, California to break out the new
Grand Ballroom.
Supposed to be a spectacular Grand Ballroom. That's like the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. That is incredible. They are coming back January 26th out here in Temecula, California.
After January 20th in LA.
In LA, right? So they're going from LA to Temecula in just a matter of a week. And the process of that, Bellator has announced a signing of who's who of multiple people. And we've been waiting and saying that wouldn't it be cool if they brought a heavyweight tournament and with the who's of who coming over? And sure enough, here we go. Bellator heavyweight tournament. Let me break it down for you. You get 4 heavyweights, 4 light heavyweights. That's weird in general. The current light heavyweight champion, Ryan Bader, will move up to heavyweight to compete for the strap. Light heavyweights that are also moving up. Quentin Rampage Jackson.
No.
King Mo Lawal.
Quentin Rampage Jackson
Says he is a heavyweight.
He is a heavyweight.
Okay. King Mo Lawal moving
Yes.
up. Chael Sonnen moving up. Even though just like Rampage, nah, dude, I'm a heavyweight. You're
No.
an undersized heavyweight.
Well, that one he's not. Yeah, Chael Sonnen is a 205er. Ryan Bader's a 205er. King Mo's a 205er. Who else is on that list?
Those are the only 4 that they released that said that they were declared a light heavyweight. Okay.
Oh, Matt Mitrione
Nah.
could be classified as a 205er.
Most of these guys fluctuate, could be like 205 and
But the
and
clear
heavyweight.
ones that are clearly not a heavyweight: Chael Sonnen, King Mo,
and
Ryan Bader.
Right.
Clearly, those guys are nowhere near Fedor, nowhere near Rampage, nowhere near Nelson.
But there's one guy on that list that has beat heavyweights. His name is King Mo.
Because he's money weight.
Right?
Wherever the money is, he goes and fights. He ain't afraid.
But what I also find interesting about this heavyweight tournament is that it will consist of 7 fights, 1 per night, and it span over 7 events. And it will be crowned on what most likely will be December 25th of 2018 for the first, just like Rising's done it, their heavyweight Grand Prix in Rising on December 25th on Christmas Day. They believe this will happen at the same time. They will crown their first heavyweight champion since the debacle of that belt. And you know what? I want to hear, where's Czech Congo in all of this?
Right? Where's Czech Congo? Czech Congo deserves to be there. Where's Bobby Lashley?
We're
But-
talking
but
about
the thing-
guys that were fighting before.
But here's why. Here's why you don't see Bobby Lashley. Here's why you don't see Czech Congo. This idea by Scott Coker, the mad scientist himself, the thing is that it's been done before. Scott Coker created the heavyweight Grand Prix back in Strikeforce.
Yes, he did.
That featured 8 relevant fight names at that time. drew record-breaking TV ratings at that time, featured names that you knew, Fedor, I think Andrei Arlovsky was in that one, Alistair Overeem was in that one. It was a prelude to what was supposed to be Fedor standing at the end of the line. But Fedor got beat in the first round of that, and then subsequently everything else went to hell in a handbasket. 4 months separated the first pair of quarterfinals.
Yep.
Then after that, the next months, nobody ever saw anything. Then UFC purchased Strikeforce right after the tournament began. That was all she wrote of that. So when you're looking at the mad scientist behind why he's doing this, it's because of the fact that, again,
It brings ratings.
whether you like it or not, you know who Frank Mir is. You know who Matt Matrone
Right.
is. You know who King Mo is. You know who Chael Sonnen is. Yada, yada, yada.
Do you
They
not?
all are going to talk. They're all
I was
going to
just
sell
gonna say that.
this fight. You're going to watch it. I've heard it for years now. That when Bellator does crazy things like this, I'm not watching it.
And yet you guys
There's-
blow up the TV, and
You
they're
s-
going to debut this on Paramount Network. Can you imagine that Paramount, the movies, everything, they have said from the beginning that with Viacom, that they were going to go out of their way and make this a big production. We've seen their Big Ten events,
So how much bigger are they going to go?
right? What? They're going to debut on Paramount Network, folks. Okay, on TV. I don't know if it's going to be if they're going to change their format in terms of live or pre-tape. I really wish they would live instead of
on
pre-tape.
both sides of the
right?
world?
On both sides of the world, like the UFC does. But I keep thinking about the possibilities of Paramount putting their money into this with Viacom and thinking about all the possibilities that when I hear, oh, they're going to do bigger. Like, their Big Ten events are crazy.
Yeah.
Like, if you haven't been to one, you are missing out because we've covered Bellator at their Big Ten events. And, whoo, they will blow your socks off, literally.
Right?
And here they're going to do something special. I don't know what special is. I saw the poster from Paramount Networks, the new one that they released, with all the like the fighters that are all kind of cascading towards the Paramount logo. I'm like, dude, that's pretty sick.
And you look at it and
Like
they've
it
already...
looks like a movie.
It
Looks like
does.
a movie poster with the names at the top.
It does, but let's talk about the potential matchups, okay? It's already been announced through the grapevine, kind of openly thrown out there. The first fight,
Oh,
Fedor Emelianenko
Sonnen.
is set to square off against Frank Mir.
oh yeah.
That'll be the first round matchup. To me, it would be Fedor versus Chael. Because Chael's been outspoken calling for Fedor for quite some time. So I would have gone that route. But then if you break down of, well, okay, you already announced Fedor versus Frank Mir, the battle from Pride. Let's redo it in circa 2018. What other fights would you possibly make? Well, you got, if you throw out Fedor and you throw out Mir, well, do you really want to do King Mo versus Rampage Jackson? They've fought twice already. Was not that entertaining. Jackson versus Bader. Bader won in a lopsided fight between those two. You're not going to see Frank Mir versus Nelson because Frank Mir's already paired up with Fedor. So then let's break it down. Okay, if you want an entertaining fight, let's go Quentin Rampage Jackson versus Roy Nelson. Because Rampage just came out again in an interview and says, I don't want to face Chael. I've already been leg humped in my last fight. I don't want to be leg humped again. So then if you bait into that and you don't want to give him Chael Sonnen in the first fight, then who do you pair him up with? Roy Nelson. What are they going to do?
Stand there and bang.
They're going to throw leather. You're going to have your prototypical, what I stand and bang. So that would be interesting. Then it's like, oh, okay, let's go down the ladder. This has been talked about since Ryan Bader went to Bellator. King Mo.
Yep.
That's the only fight you give that guy.
Yes. At this point, that is it. That's the only fight that makes sense.
Or you put Ryan Bader on one side of the bracket, King Mo on the other side of the bracket, and hope they run right through the brackets and meet in the middle. That may be entertaining. Not sure how every other matchup would make out. But then that leaves, at the end of the day, Chael Sonnen versus Matt Mitrione. Sure, let's go with that one.
Right?
Honorable mention. Nothing really exciting there. Nothing really to jump off the wagon about. But that's how I'd break it down.
And see,
Fedor versus Frank Mir.
Yep. I have no problem with that.
Rampage versus Nelson.
No problem with that.
Mo versus Bader.
No problem with that.
Chael versus Matt Mitrione.
Absolutely.
There's your brackets.
That's the
There's
way that
your
it should break
pairings.
down if you want an exciting heavyweight tournament. Or
So-
like I said, or
so
like you said, let's put two of the polar opposite guys in the 205 division.
So on one side, let's put Fedor and Frank, Rampage and Nelson, Bader and Lawal, Chael and Matt Mitrione.
Hold on. I got Fedor, Frank, Ram, Nelson, because I'm going to break this down. So, and then you got King Mo versus
Bader. And then Chael versus Matt.
then Chael versus Matt. So then you go.
So on the left side of the bracket.
So King Mo advances through Ryan Bader. So you get King versus Matt because Chael ain't going to win anybody. I think Frank outlasts Fedor.
Yep.
Nelson will beat
Rampage.
So then you got Frank
Versus King Mo.
versus King Mo
In the finals.
in the finals.
I'm not too disappointed in that.
No, I'm not either. Because I think that King and Matt, that'll be an insane fight. Like, he could literally go either way. But I think King is at the point of his career where he's trying to make his name relevant again. And in order to do that, he needs a title. And he always wants title shots. Like, you cannot put it past him.
He wants money fights.
Right. So, oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? King Mo versus Frank Mir? Tell me you guys wouldn't be excited about that.
Put your ego aside
right?
and tell me you wouldn't mind that final matchup.
The final four, I would be like, dude, yes. Frank, Nelson, King, Matt.
But one thing I'm not about is, dude, Bellator 188.
In Israel, they lost their main event.
Patricio again doesn't make it.
So it's now headlined by the one of the oldest fighters on the card is Noah Lahat from Israel, who is 2-1 since he was released by the UFC. Meh. Next. John Salter putting his winning streak on the line versus Jason Radcliffe, who's coming off a 14-second KO back in 2016. That dude, no, what are we doing? I agree, Michael. I would so like to see other heavyweights that deserve, like I said, as much as I despise the darkness. Czech Congo
Should have been there.
should have been on this list.
Bobby Lashley
Should have been on this list. Two guys that has literally bled, sweat, and cried for Bellator's heavyweight division, not even talked about. If I'm Czech Congo, I am pissed. If I'm Bobby
But
Lashley,
again-
I am pissed.
But again, guys, Michael's on. Tristan. You guys are filling the big picture about Czech Congo. What doesn't Czech Congo do?
he doesn't talk. Okay, but
What
Bobby
do-
Lashley can.
What do all of those have in common?
They all talk. They will all sell this.
Bobby
fight.
Lashley,
Yep.
for a guy who cuts promos,
Does
not
not
talk.
talk. Yep. I agree.
So that's where we're at.
And then
That's
we
the issue we have. And then that's what we have with Bellator 188. It's just, meh. I'd like to talk about it, but gets an honorable mention. It's going down this week.
Right? Honorable mention. An honorable mention, though. We got to give it out to our boy Joseph Phoebus for throwing a heck of a card.
For California Cage Wars.
And crowning their first heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
Although with the wrong belt. Sorry. Had to. Keep it 100.
But yeah, James Cannon won the inaugural heavyweight title. And he did what he said he was going to do. He submitted Domingo Carrillo in very quick fashion. Those two came out firing on all cylinders.
No question.
And James Cannon just was the superior athlete, took him down. Boom, rear naked choke.
And it was sad because Domingo injured his hamstring in that when he was pulled backwards. So
Yeah, if you saw how he was pulled backwards, you would do the same thing.
Right.
Like, I'm surprised he didn't get hurt worse. At first, I thought that maybe he popped his knee out. But it is what it is. James Cannon, he's got a bright future. So you guys want to make sure you keep tabs on him.
Oh, absolutely. He has a fight coming up for Bellator. So be sure to be on the lookout for James Cannon because, yeah, boy got signed by Bellator MMA. So he has a fight coming up for them. It would be at the LA Forum. And I believe that's on the card with Rory McDonald.
Yeah, and then you look at the compound is legit. If you look at the compound and you look at like Sean Loeffler, you're like, no way.
Because nobody gives
Sean Loeffler a benefit of the
because
doubt.
he talks. He's a loud mouth. He's very brash, very forward, and I think that's why we all click and we all get along so well together. Like in the Promptu interview, we get along so well.
Because Sean and us are almost the same. We're
Right?
very outspoken. You're going to love us for who we are, or you're going to hate us for who we are. And quite frankly, we don't care. And that's probably why we're still doing what we do.
Right?
Because we don't sugarcoat. We don't kiss anybody's butt.
We're not about the fanboys. About how many pictures I could take with all these fighters and get them all up over the other thing to say I'm legit. That's not what we're about. We have plenty of enough fighters that we know and plenty enough fighters that know and understand us that at the end of the day we respect them, but we will call it straight down the middle. You know? That's why we get a lot of fighters that still want to come onto our show. They're like, dude, we need to do this. But Sean Loeffler, like one of the things that he told us, and it was prototypical Sean, because we spoke to Sean about Jason, because I said James has a up and down career since he's gone into pro, and Sean took that to heart. Sean was like, dude, like that's not a knock on James, that's a knock on me as a coach.
And then he went ahead and clarified that why he's had these issues and the fact that he took a 300-pound guy and turned him into a beast.
And what they had to work on to get to where he is now.
Sean's a great coach, and he's one of the best to be in this field. You saw him and his opponent and his fighters come
Although
to
he
fight.
did pull a Conor McGregor though at the event.
Yeah, he did.
We saw Ali Jafar of the compound whip around on Smith with a flying armbar. From our side, we didn't really see a tap because we were on a different angle. But the compound guys, everybody on the other side of the cage saw a tap. I was recording it, so they came to us for instant replay. Yes, instant replay was invoked at the fight by your boys.
That's the good thing about the fact that it wasn't sanctioned because we could go, hey, we need instant replay. Here we
So
go.
they came to us and said, what do you guys think? What's going on? You got to keep it going because it's inconclusive. So they did, but Sean Loeffler got into that cage and pushed people and yelling at the top of his lungs. I mean, that's Sean. That's always been Sean. And I don't take anything away from him because he's so passionate about his fighters.
And that's what makes you strive to be better is that when you've got a guy who's very passionate about what he wants to do, what he wants to accomplish, you feed off of that.
Spike Carlisle won.
Spike Carlisle
Came out in his suit.
I'm so confused by Spike Carlisle. I swear to God. Not necessarily about his entrances. They would fit if he ever goes to Japan and ever fights in Rising. His style of entrances would make perfect sense over there.
Right.
But he confuses me because the guy that goes to Thailand, trains and learns legitimate Muay Thai from the experts up there and comes back here and still wrestles. Like, dude, I want to see what you've learned over there. And no, goes right back down to what's got him to the dance and just puts beatings on people. And it's interesting to see how much he's evolved from the time we saw him to the time where he is at now.
Oh, no question.
Is that the guy has changed night and day. There's no knocking or debating that one. He's your prototypical, yep, he's evolved. He's learning each and every inch of the game. The other guy, too, that stood up was Enrique Meza from Team Quest.
Oh, wow. He's a tall kid, too.
First time we saw him, I thought he was awkward. Comes out against Joshua Bird and lights him up with two left hooks to the
body
ribs.
shots. And one, I even told you that when Joshua Bird took the shot to the liver rib area, you heard it. You saw Joshua Bird's face, and all of a sudden a light just shut off, and he took that second one, and down he went. Joshua Bird, I said it before, that dude, tough break, tough loss, but man, I'm glad to see him back. Because he could be a legitimate, scary freak.
Before he got caught with those two left hooks to the body,
he was working it.
He was showing exactly why he's going to be a top heavyweight because of the fact that he unleashes his hands. The last time we saw him was at TFE, True Form Entertainment, where he busted his hand. Then he had to battle injuries, come back from it. Then he went on hiatus because of another injury. So you see that he's growing, he's maturing, just bad luck. The other guy that was interesting on the fight card was James Trinidad. I almost want to see what James Trinidad can do from Premier MMA to see what other high-level opponents he's going to get because he looked pretty smooth on his back. When he needed to take somebody's back, when he needed to do transitions, he was very well-rounded.
His ground game was impressive.
And yet, from the corner guys, it was like, and this guy's Muay Thai?
Right.
Like, you wouldn't have even thought.
Yeah, I found that funny when they look. For people to look at us and go like, dude, yo, this is Muay Thai? And we both look down and like, well, that's what he's supposed to be. But again, you look at the guys that evolve and become something that they're supposed to be, that take their work ethic to that next level, and that's what they're here to do. We don't have that on here. That's why it kind of sucks. But Sean, that's about it. Cage Wars, heck of an event number 2. Changed the layout for the better. Had a production crew. We still did not get our headsets and stuff like that for doing live play-by-play. Hopefully, number 3 will be there and again, and we'll get our headsets so we can actually do play-by-play. So I don't have to record
I never wanted to go and cover California Cage Wars because it's unsanctioned. It's on a reservation like Explode, and Explode got a very negative and backing and everything else like that. So I was like, oh, this is going to be like Explode.
But it's not.
But Phoebus is so not like Explode.
Right?
He's just using this as a way for a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I just hope he doesn't lose that vision. Because, like, again, we talked to Sean Loeffler off during the interview or off air and talked about California Cage Wars and where this can go.
And
if Joseph Phoebus can go ahead and throw all chips in and just go for broke, California Cage Wars can be big. Just needs to get it sanctioned. Just needs to get the right people in place. And his mindset and his mindset of how he's matchmaking right now, dude, he's on point. Just got to get that next step.
Yep.
And that's not just from us. That's from Sean Loeffler. That's from other people outside. This promotion has something.
In the meantime, we are done. We are the Sports Warriors. You can Facebook friend us, Sean and Tristan Ducross. Find us find our website at www.ducrossbrothers.com. Stay up with all the latest news and happenings. Follow us on Twitter
at the Ducross Bros. You can also like our fan page, facebook.com/the Ducross Bros. Until next time, I'm Tristan Ducross. This is Sean Ducross. We are the Sports Warriors.